Now, for today's webinar, Maui Community Coqui Control, Ask Us Anything. I am Haley. I work with Maui Invasive Species Committee. I am the Outreach and Education Lead currently. And I'm so excited to welcome two guests here today that are going to be leading this webinar. They are the ones leading charge in community-based coqui control here on Maui. So first we have Terry Tolman with us, who is one of our Haʻikū neighborhood community coqui control leaders. Terry has been a key figure in MISC's coqui community program since its beginning. He leads and organized spray efforts in Haʻikū, assembling teams to treat the gulch behind Haʻikū Bible Church. Every 6 weeks, he and fellow volunteer David Badga gather supplies from MISC Space Yard for their spray week. Terry independently coordinates neighborhood efforts, which significantly eases the load on MISC's crew. His hands-on leadership, problem-solving mindset, and deep commitment make him a trusted resource in the fight against coqui frogs. He was honored with a 2023 HISAM Community Award and continues to be a model for community-based conservation in Hawaii. And then we will have joining us Rebecca Creighton, who is our coqui field coordinator at MISC. She originally hails from Maryland. Rebecca holds a Bachelor's of Science in Agricultural Science and Animal Care from the University of Maryland. Her conservation journey has taken her from the rainforest of Madagascar as a Peace Corps volunteer to coral restoration in the Florida Keys and Caribbean. Now based in Maui, she brings her field expertise and deep aloha for the land and sea to her work coordinating MISC's coqui control efforts. Rebecca leads community-based action to eliminate invasive coqui frogs, helping to protect Hawaii's unique ecosystems and biodiversity. Together today, they'll be answering your questions and sharing on how Maui residents are teaming up with MISC to share the kuleana and respond to coqui in areas where they're spreading, ultimately protecting our watersheds, ecosystems, and the quiet of our nights in Haʻikū and Maui in full. So mahalo for being with us, and we will go ahead and get started now and go ahead and start with Rebecca.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Haley, and thank you everybody for participating today. I would love to just kind of talk a little bit about coqui on Maui and what our crew has been up to, and then jump into our community program that we do with Terry. And so many of you guys know coqui frogs are invasive to the Hawaiian Islands. They're originally from Puerto Rico. They're very loud frogs. They're 20 decibels over the health limit, and so they're a problem because they're causing ecological disruption, community noise impacts, and they can threaten our native species and watersheds. Right now, with our coqui crew, we are focused on some populations in Maui that are in very precarious positions that if they were to spread any further, they would get into impenetrable lands and make their way into areas like Hana, or in watersheds or protected lands that are just very hard to access. And so we're working very diligently to stop the spread of those populations and fully eradicate them so that we can make our way back to our primary population out of Moiko Gulch that is in Haʻikū. And so while we're focused on that, we're really happy to have community involvement from our partners and people who are optimistic about containing and eradicating coqui frogs in their neighborhoods. And that's where we bring Terry Tolman in, for example. And so he's been very proactive in his neighborhood to borrow resources from MISC and to get support from our crew to provide citric acid and truck bed sprayers and our resources with our trucks and our hard pressure pumps to spray in his gulch. And then he uses his time to spray into his neighborhoods. And so that's been really awesome partnership that we do on a 6-week rotation with him. And so we have a couple community groups that we have continued, and we are really looking to formulate new community groups and get people inspired to take action in their own yards, because ultimately we cannot do it alone. This is a very a frog that proliferates very quickly. They spread rapidly. They breed at high rates. One female coqui frog can have a clutch 4 to 6 times a year, and within that clutch there can be 25 to 75 eggs. And so there's just, where there's one calling frog, there's many frogs. And in a research study that was done, they estimated that there could be 91,000 frogs per hectare. And so we have quite a challenge to take care of these frogs, but with inspired action and contributions from our community, I think we can have some long-term success. And so what we're offering to our community is support efforts. We have access to citric acid as much as you would need to spray Coqui frogs on your property. We also have truck bed sprayers and backpack sprayers. Our truck bed sprayers are 100-gallon sprayers, and we have 55-gallon sprayers that just slide right onto the truck with a high pressure pump and about 200 foot of hose. It's very easy to mix citric and easy to spray out for those frogs, and we'll teach you all the methodologies of how to find Coqui and their habitat and what to look for in addressing those frogs. If you were to develop a community group, we would love to, coordinate with you so that on a rolling basis, we could go out into your neighborhood as well as you spraying so that we could do the follow-ups and get any stragglers that left behind and ultimately make your neighborhood quiet and eliminate some Coqui frogs. So with all that being said, I'd love to pass it over to Terry and get your feedback on your community group.
Okay. So they gave me a few questions, starter questions, and that helps me. And how we got started was many years ago, MISC had a meeting at the Haʻikū Bible Church and communicated with the community that they were going to have it. And it inspired several of us to say, hey, let's go ahead and do this. There was a second meeting up at Giggle Hill, and Mayor Victorino was there too. And it got people from several neighborhoods excited about it because the frogs were getting louder and more frequent. And so a couple of my neighbors and I got together. One guy had a truck that we could use for spraying, and we went out and sprayed our neighborhood, and it got quiet, and that made us hopeful for the future. It's not it totally relies on a few things. One is neighbors joining together to make for quiet nights, MISC providing the equipment, and having a truck to carry the sprayer. And if you've got all that, you got a good chance. We in our neighborhood, I don't feel that we're going to eradicate them totally. I mean, you have friends that say, well, have you eradicated them yet? And like, no, you're not. It's more a maintenance thing of trying to keep them quiet and at bay. And if a biological cure comes along, that would be great. But you can't spray the whole world, and you don't want to. You just want to spray where the frogs are. So you get more adept at figuring out where the frogs are, how to spray them effectively, and spraying them every 6 weeks. And the other big thing that people tend not to do is cleaning out the habitat that they like. Don't have a frog hotel in your yard or in your neighborhood, and carry your green waste away. Don't throw it in the gulch, because people do that, and it just means there are going to be even more frogs. So, yeah, you just got to pay attention to what's going on. And as far as starting another group, in our, like 2 blocks below our neighborhood, they're louder than heck. And why is that? Well, they got cane grass growing in their yard 5 foot tall as a nice little visual barrier for their property, but that's where all the frogs are hanging out, and it's deafening. We've been spraying on our street, and somebody driving down the road says, oh, come over to my neighborhood 3 blocks away. It's like, well, this is our area, and you can start your group and we'd help you start it maybe. But I think if you see the difference between an untreated neighborhood and a treated neighborhood, it's quite a bit. So what to say, the real success is when suddenly you got a quiet night after weeks of too much. And how you can do that, it's you gotta be able to persevere. If you forget about it for 3 or 4 months, they're going to come right back. If you don't, we have a pasture near our neighborhood that we need to get cleared out because they're coming through there. We have some neighbors that are not that interested in spraying, or I'm a tenant, I'm renting, it's not my kuleana. Well, there are plenty of renters that will spray. And what I'd rather is somebody that's, if, they let us know they've got frogs, we'll come with the truck and we'll teach you how to spray and we'll manage the hose and the truck and the pumps and all that. But we don't need to be spraying everybody's yard. We're not a free service. I mean, it is free. We're volunteering, but they seem to think that, oh, the frogs are over there. Go spray over there. Well, how about you spray? Help out. And I think that's a challenge of getting people to realize it is their kuleana, not just the few people that are volunteering. Okay, I've said enough for now. We'll see what questions we get.
Okay, yes. So we are open for questions. You can feel free to throw them in the chat. I see one here right now in the Q&A we can start with. Do coqui frogs have any predators? And how do the frogs die? So, Rebecca, would you want to take that one to get started?
Sure thing. Awesome question. So in Puerto Rico, coqui frogs have many predators, like 15 to 17 natural predators, but on Hawaii, we don't have very many natural predators. We can assume that cats and maybe chickens are going after them, but there's no species that are really targeting coqui frogs. And in the wild in Hawaii, through lab studies, they estimated that coqui frogs could live 4 to 6 years in Hawaiian environments. And so that's kind of a long longevity, especially for a female that could produce 4 to 6 clutches per year, up to 75 eggs. And so the way that they die is with citric acid. We spray a food grade citric acid. It's a 14% solution that's diluted with water. It's basically like a very strong lemon juice. And it's what is used to make gummy worm sour, for example. And so when it touches the frog, the way frogs drink is through their skin. And so the citric acid goes into their skin and it ultimately attacks their nervous system and dehydrates them and kills them. And so that's how we are able to eliminate coqui frogs.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rebecca. And that was Michelle who had the question. Michelle, thank you so much. Hope that helps. And we have another one here from Lance. What plants or structures even serve as frog hotels that I should remove from my yard? We'll answer that live. Either probably Terry or Rebecca, I'm sure, could answer that one. So.
I'd love to. They really like bromeliad. So it's okay to have some, but have them in one area because that's where you'll find them to spray them. If you have bromeliad spread all over 2 acres of land, you're going to have a lot of hunting to do. They frequent tea leaves and banana trees and any kind of green waste or leaves along a fence or anything like that. Lahala trees or anything, if you have a big lahala, that can be problematic because they will, if they get up into the top of it, they can just live up there. But it's mostly clutter. It's wherever they can be on the ground, be safe, be moist because they're underneath. And gosh, there's bugs there, plenty to eat. So that's a place to be. And the more you can eliminate that kind of thing and just clean up your yard. They don't like mowed grass that much. But anything that's kind of clutterish, they like that. They don't need a pond, but they do like water.
Yeah, that brings up a good point that you brought up green waste. We recommend within MISC to our community members to take your green waste to the dump in Kahului where you can deliver your green waste there because it is like a coqui hotel for babies it's a great breeding zone and it's a very moist, wet environment and they thrive within the green waste in the gulch. And so just to disrupt that reproductive cycle, we definitely encourage you to take your green waste out of the gulch.
And the green waste dump is hot and dry, not a frog environment. So they're not going to survive there, but anywhere out here in Haʻikū, etc., where it's moist or anywhere irrigated, they'll like that.
Awesome. Thank you guys. And thank you, Lance, again for your question. We have another question from Cameron. Thank you. Do community teams usually spray during the day or at night? And do you ever hand capture?
For me, I spray more in the day because they're gonna, in theory, they're gonna be more down at the ground level. And I can see where I'm spraying and not overspray somebody's orchids or something. You don't want to spray orchids, citric trees, or mock orange. Funny enough, they don't like citric acid. And but sometimes if you spray in the day, do a pretty good spray, and then you hear a few at night and come back and spray right at where they're at right then. The problem with nighttime is they climb up the trees, so you need to spray higher than you would in the daytime. And I've captured a few by hand. I can't say I'm that quick for doing it, but there are some people that are really good at it. MISC has a lot of people that have done it. You know, it depends on the area. If you have a lot of delicate plants and stuff, and you have the patience to, sit there and watch for them, they're amazingly quick and they're really small, but it works.
And I will say that something that's really helpful if you're going to do a day spray is just going out the night before and doing an assessment of where the frogs are, because they tend to
Yeah.
be very territorial. The males, they like their little patch and they typically will stay on their patch. So whether it's a banana leaf or a tea leaf or bromeliads or in the green waste, you can usually find them back in the same place. So what we'll do is go out and survey at night and we'll flag or just take note of where we know frogs are. And then when we return during the day to spray, we know that we're targeting those animals. And like Terry said, during the night, they tend to rise up. And during the day, they're kind of closer to the forest floor because they're trying to stay cool and find water to stay alive. And so if you're targeting a green waste pile, for example, you'd probably be pretty successful during the day because those frogs are going to be based at the bottom of the pile, just trying to make it through the day so they can start breeding again at night and calling.
Yeah, I scout at night and spray mostly in the day.
But nighttime spraying is also just as effective. You can really pinpoint where those frogs are, and you can get really good at calling frogs. We recommend either doing the whistle like the Coqui frog and they'll start talking back to you, or you can play the YouTube Coqui frog call on your phone and they'll also respond to that. And so that's a good way to start pinpointing them. And usually it's like the more dominant males will start calling, and once you eliminate some of the dominant males, then the next crop of males will start popping up. So don't be surprised if you spray an area and you think you got all the frogs, because the next night another group of frogs might return. They're just very strong, tiny, mighty warrior animals.
And they're very good ventriloquists. You can have one 3 feet in front of you, he's right there, and suddenly he's like 5 feet away. And I don't know how they throw their voice that way, but just spray a little bit bigger circle.
I see a question in the chat about Coqui spreading in Haʻikū on Maui. Besides Malika Gulch, they're now on West K, Ulumalu, and along the ocean side of Hana Highway between East K and Ulumalu. Is MISC taking care of those areas? Yes, we were actually just in Ulumalu last night, and after we left, Ulumalu was silent. We have started some work on Oili, and we're really excited to get going in there. We're doing some community engagement on East Kuiaha and Kauikoa, and then just really encouraging community support and people getting truck bed sprayers, because obviously we just can't do it alone. We have a team of 6, including myself, and so we're out there every night, Monday through Thursday, working till 11:30, and getting as many frogs as possible. But we really, really value our community supporters who come and get our truck bed sprayers and just take care of some of the frogs in your own property, because like we said, they breed very quickly and sometimes it's a lot to keep up with. But we're on it, and we're definitely aware of those areas.
Awesome. We have another question in the question and A area from David. Thank you, David. He is asking, is there any spraying equipment on a smaller scale that may be provided? I'm assuming more smaller than a truck bed sprayer. Correct me if I am wrong, David.
David, we have backpack sprayers that are 5 gallons that are quite easy to use. And I've also just recently ordered 5 roller sprayers that are battery operated. And then some of our community members have created different spray methodologies. And so some people have had a success with a pressure washer. And so they'll use a trash can and fill it with citric acid and then use kind of like a waterproof transfer pump, like an aquarium that they'll put in citric acid and then feed that to the pressure pump. And then they can spray with high volume out of the pressure pump. And I think that's been really helpful for some folks because you can just wheel it around. And it's pretty easy to use. And some other people have come up with like big 400-gallon like reservoirs and filling that with citric and using some sort of pump system. And we actually have someone who used a car battery to spray for Coqui. And they have like a 25-gallon pump that they just put on the back of their like four-wheeler and can spray off of that.
Also for the, like some of my neighbors are a little bit older and a backpack sprayer would be too big for them to handle, but a little 1 or 2 gallon garden sprayer that you just pump up and down and go out and spray. And it's, you know, if they know right where the frog is and spray a 4 or 5 foot circle around it, they can often get it. And that really, once you get the ball rolling, if you had all your neighbors taking care of their little bit, you could keep it all pretty well controlled. It's when it gets really overrun that you got to do a lot of spraying or you have wide areas. The other thing is a super soaker, a 5-gallon bucket with citric and a super soaker. That'll shoot pretty far to get the little bit higher up in the trees or whatever. The other plant they like is, I forgot to mention, is bird of paradise. They like to be down in the center of that. And just stay away from your orchids and citric and delicate plants. And if you were to overspray on an orchid or something, just rinse it off within half an hour or an hour real good, and it should be all right.
And I will plug David for a backpack sprayer loaner that MISC does. We don't do the 1 to 2 gallon, just little pump sprayers like Terry was talking about, but the backpack sprayers are on loaner. And you can find a Google form for that on mauiinvasive.org, which is our website. And you just fill out a Google form, super straightforward. And then the Coqui crew will get in contact with you and get you that. And then as well as citric as well. And then we just had Lance ask a question saying, what's the best place to get citric acid? So Rebecca, do you want to take that one?
Sure. There's a link on our website where you can request citric acid, and the crew does deliveries every other Tuesday, usually. But you're also welcome to come by Old Maui School where we're based and pick up citric acid, and you can just coordinate with me and I'm happy to provide that for you. And I can provide my contact information in the chat.
I also mentioned that they have small Ziploc bags for 1 gallon, 1 bag per gallon, or I think 5 gallons. And then you also have, I think, 50-gallon or 50-pound bags for if somebody's got a lot to mix, right?
Yes.
Rebecca? Yeah. Okay. But they make it easy.
Awesome. Thank you guys. And I'm seeing one in our chat here. What about ponds? I have a small stock tank pond with fish and there's a Coqui nearby. Is it safe for my fish if a little citric got in the pond?
I would think maybe a tiny bit would be okay, but I'd be worried about your pH and your water quality shifting. And so if you're going to spray, just be mindful of the direction that you're spraying and the wind so that it doesn't splash back into your pond. And you might be able to hand capture if
Or
you
cover
can
it with the
figure out-
plywood or something.
Yeah, cover it with a bag for the time that you're spraying. But you could potentially hand capture that frog if you're able to pinpoint exactly where they are. They tend to not move too much as you get closer. And I kind of like to use my fingers like a little claw and get them, because if I do with my hands, they're likely to jump away. But if you kind of just come in like a claw and just grab them, you're usually successful. But I would recommend wearing gloves or washing your hands immediately after because they can carry rat lungworm disease.
Awesome. Yes, great tip on the gloves, Rebecca. Okay, we have a couple more questions in our question and answer section. From Cameron. Thank you again, Cameron. MISC, do you guys ever use the tubes for the Coqui to jump in? Are there any special tricks like that that you've tried that you like or don't like?
Oh, like the capture tubes. I think Oahu has done that before. And we actually did do that when we went to go capture some frogs that were in Lahaina. And I think we had a little bit of success with that. But we don't have any, we partnered with HDOA to do that and they had that piece of equipment. But we don't have any at MISC. We've really just found that whistling and trying to hand capture is the best method for us. We really enjoy hand capturing frogs. And other than that, I can't really think of anything in particular. There's probably all kinds of fun methodologies and like scientific analysis that could be done to attract Coqui or call them out of particular areas, or maybe having like a very dominant call where females go to a particular zone, but we just haven't explored that yet. But yeah.
Thank you. And then David has a question. Is it helpful to spray proactively?
I would say on like a 4 to 6 week rotation is helpful to get ahead of the reproductive cycle. So they'll breed quickly, but it takes 8 months for those frogs to reach sexual maturity. And so once you eliminate many male calling frogs, you might have a crop of immature frogs that are still within that area. And so 8 months later, they'll reach sexual maturity and then they'll start reproducing all over again. And so it's good to get ahead of that cycle and just mitigate as best you can. So, you know, where there's one calling frog, there's probably many. And so just doing some repeat sprays will always be helpful to reduce those infestations in the populations. And for MISC, like with Terry's zone, for example, we go every 6 weeks. There's always frogs popping up in his gulch, but because he sprays so frequently, it's not as severe as it could be in other zones. You could probably go down to like where Haʻikū Marketplace is and notice that it's just very loud down there in that gulch, and then compare to where Terry lives, and it's just a little bit calmer because he's very proactive about spraying for those frogs.
Also might comment about spraying proactively. This isn't like an insect bait or something. You got to get it on the frog while it's wet. So if I sprayed it today and the frog walked through 3 days later, it's already dried and he's not going to be affected by it, right? I believe. And,
yeah, it
yeah.
dilutes after a little bit of time. So yeah, it needs to be direct impact. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you guys. And we have a question from Elena. Are there some community Coqui fighting groups currently on Maui? I'd like to join and help out somehow, but I'm a renter. There are no Coquis in my immediate neighborhood. And I also don't know any of my neighbors, but I am in Haʻikū and they are spreading. And I'd like to help out and also just be in the loop. So maybe, yeah, Terry, you could have a new friend potentially.
I can recruit you. Yes. You could come help spray if you'd like, just to learn what it's about, and we just finished yesterday, so it'll be 6 weeks, but you know, you get in touch with us through Rebecca and we can help you out.
We also are starting a community volunteer program with Malama Hamakua, and it's actually taking place tonight and tomorrow. And we're going to do a community spray. And so we'll bring a couple of MISC trucks and our fire hoses, and we're going to spray in a zone. I think it's county land, and they have 300 acres, and it's situated near Oʻili Gulch. And so there's some frogs on this property, and it's nice and open and perfect for spraying and learning and teaching. And so you're more than welcome to come if that's something that you're interested in. The information can be found on our MISC Instagram, and I think Malama Hamakua website or Instagram. And Miley is the person that you would just sign up with.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. And we have from David, are the counties and or state concerned enough about this to get some help here on the project?
I think that invasive species work is something that's always been supported by the county. We are state funded, and we've always received this support that we need each year. We could always use more money for those frogs to be entirely eradicated, but we are given, a particular amount to manage the species that we've targeted, and that includes Coqui, little fire ants, Myconia, and invasive plants. And so we do have quite a bit of work ahead of us, but we always have had support, and that's what has kept this going over the years.
Wonderful. And Michelle asked, what do you do with a hand captured frog?
You can either put that frog in citric acid or put it in the freezer. Those are the approved methodologies for getting rid of frogs. I would not recommend putting that frog in another zone. Like, for example, if you have a frog that's just calling in the middle of Ulumalu, for example, it's just a single calling frog, I would not take that frog and put it back in Maligo Gulch, for example. So we want to eliminate those frogs when we get them.
Put them in a bag, then put them in the freezer.
Yes, great point. Great point. Yeah, I used to be on the Coqui crew myself, and we would go down into the gulches sometimes, and there's just hand capture ability. We would always bring just Ziploc baggies with us so we could kind of just grab the frogs as we see, and then just put a little bit of citric acid in that bag to start the process there. So great questions, everybody. This has been so awesome so far. We still have about 10 more minutes to go, and we don't currently have any questions in the queue or anything. So we did come up with a few questions just in case something like this happens. So I will, kind of focus on Terry for a second. So in this community program, are there any particular tools or methods that you would recommend for folks just starting out? Some things that you might have wished you'd known earlier in your Coqui control journey?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. One is understanding and learning from the whole process of having a truck, picking up the sprayer, filling the tank, doing the spraying and where to spray and how to spray and all that. And then afterwards cleaning everything up and returning it to MISC, and also logging where you sprayed, because they track how much was sprayed where, when, and how, and who did it. And they track the volunteer hours too. So that's important. And especially staying flexible and accommodating whenever possible, because when you're working with volunteers and equipment, equipment can fail, or volunteers can get bored or tired or lose their interest. And the hard part is having a consistent supply of people to do it, and that are motivated and working together and getting along and all that. And it's kind of like a volunteer fire department. You gotta keep it all rolling.
Yes, you do indeed. So then to build on that, have you made any adjustments to how you spray or even organize your neighborhood and your the other volunteers that you work with over the years?
Sure. Try to work with people that are willing to help spray, not just point you in some general direction. Oh, they're over there. The frogs are over there, just somewhere in the corner, go for it. And encourage people. I'm not really great at this, but the challenge seems to be to get people into the program and keep them focused and the reward is when it's quiet. It's been noisy, and then the next day, I mean, when the neighbor says, wow, it was so quiet last night, it's really nice. That's a reward for everybody, the sprayers and the neighbors, but it'd be good if the neighbors step in and do that. I have a new neighbor that this week, he's out of town most of the time, but he's here, and he was helping me spray some other neighbors' yards and or plants. And that was really good. And I look forward to him doing that more, but that the people challenge is probably the bigger thing. The equipment challenge of just, citric is corrosive, so it's hard on the equipment. MISC and their mechanics do a great job at keeping the equipment running right. But you got to expect some issues from time to time, whether it's mechanical or people or whatever. So just be flexible and understanding.
Awesome. Yes. And that you have been, Terry. Thank you. So what are some main challenges you have faced? Maybe it is some of those people. So how do you view this work through the lens of Kuleana and responsibility to your place in your community? Kind of where did that, spark for you?
Well, I think that's the challenge in a nutshell, is you volunteer your time and you hope other people will help out. If you see a piece of trash blowing down the street in your neighborhood, do you pick it up or you just walk by? It's the same sort of thing. If, you try to make things better than it would be if you did nothing. And that's what we're trying to do. And the more people, there's a trick to it. I haven't quite learned it all, but to motivating people or causing them to be motivated, and realize that, it's like Rebecca says, it's letting them feel empowered to make a change. And that's it. And there's probably a lot of good ways to do that. I'm still learning.
Awesome. Yep. Okay, so I will ask one more question to you, Terry, and then we'll kind of go on some final remarks. Oh, actually, we have a question here in the Q&A, so I will do that first. Elena, thank you again. Her question is, was there a period of time of reduced funding for MISC/HISC in the last 1 to 2 years due to the Governor Green order? I remember reading something about reduced funding for environmental programs in the news some time ago. Rebecca, that might be more of a you question, but I can also help out if need be.
I actually, would Lissa be comfortable speaking to that since you're on the call, Lissa? Or
Yep, I see movement.
Sure. Okay, here I am. My name is Lissa Strohecker. I am public relations specialist, and I'm just sort of here to support and fill in the gap. So yeah, happy to speak to that. So I guess in short, our funding varies dramatically year to year. So, we can only address the problems that we're funded to address. And so there is typically funding fluctuations from year to year. I wouldn't say it was necessarily in the last year to two. So the Hawaiʻi Invasive Species Council does receive funding straight from the legislature through like an allocation. So that funding has remained relatively steady. That being said, sometimes it doesn't go as far with cost of living increases and everything like that. And so the challenges that we face like that. But yeah, I wouldn't say there was a dramatic period of time for reduced funding in the last year or two. We have had some challenges, like many programs on Maui, with staffing. So we have had reduced staffing, and I think that might be what you may have heard. And that's just, I think, many of the conservation programs, and just jobs, businesses throughout Maui due to the fires and housing crises. So housing challenges, I should say. So yeah, I hope that answers it.
Awesome. Thank you so
yes.
much, Lissa.
And I guess there was, I should add that there will be a bump in the upcoming year for the Hawaiʻi Invasive Species Council. So an additional $4 million for the next 2 years. So that will be distributed through grants throughout the state, in which MISC applies for some of those grant funding. So yeah, so it is actually increasing. Thanks. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Awesome. No, thank you so much, Lisa. We appreciate that. Okay, we have a question from Michelle. Do you have to pick up the dead frogs? Great question. I will leave that to either Rebecca or
How would you find them? If you capture them, you got them, if you hand capture, but other than that, it's not often that you see them. I don't pick them up. I think sometimes when we're going for funding, they the council or county council or somebody say, well, how many did you kill? And there's not a body count, so you can't measure it exactly. You just know that it got really quiet.
Yeah, Mama Earth will do her thing. Mother Nature will take care of those frogs. So
Yeah.
we don't remove them.
awesome. Well, really good questions, everyone. Thank you so much for participating and making this Ask Me Anything very successful. I will leave it to Terry and Rebecca for the last minute or so. Do you guys have any just things that you feel like you want to share? And then if so, if not, after there will just be another short poll to answer at the end. If you could do that, that'd be awesome. So yeah, Rebecca, Terry, anything else that you guys want to add about Coqui community work?
I'd like to reiterate 4 points, and then Rebecca can have the wrap up. Reduce your frog-friendly habitats and clear the undergrowth. Don't dump your green waste in a gulch. Spray every 6 weeks consistently, and spot spray in between as needed. Rebecca.
Yeah, thank you, Terry. I'm very grateful to have Terry's support, and like I said before, we can't do it all. So it's really important to me to cultivate these partnerships and do this incredible work. We have this privilege of being on this beautiful island and the opportunity to take care of our land and to Malama Aina. And I think it's awesome to empower our community members and our neighbors and to take action into something that we can have some pretty amazing impact on, and it's well worth it when you have a good night's sleep. And so I really appreciate everybody who's jumped on this call today to learn a bit more about Coqui frogs, and we're happy to support you through your journey if this is something that you're interested in taking on. So please take a look at the resources that we've shared in the chat, and feel free to reach out through email or text or call if you would like to talk further about Coqui frogs. And thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Well, thank you all again. The poll will show up when the webinar actually ends. So just when it ends, feel free to help us out. Do that. It really, really, really helps us out with everything. So thank you all again for being here. Thank you to Rebecca and for Terry for doing this. This was kind of something that came out of my brain. I just saw how of a force it was when I was on the Coqui crew myself, and how big of a force just a couple people in a neighborhood really could be. So thank you guys for sharing your knowledge and your time always and forever on this Coqui project. And thank you everyone for being involved and asking great questions. Always feel free to go to our resources at mauiinvasive.org. You can find us there and everything there. So with that, thank you again, and good luck out there.
Thanks, Haley.
Thank you.
Thank you.